Pierre McGuire, Tiki and Tierney, how are you, sir? What's happening?
Gentlemen, nice to visit with you.
Always a pleasure, man. It's been a while. You know, Pierre, I had this thought. I didn't really think that I'd necessarily start the conversation with this, but Tiki and I just spent the first hour and 20 minutes of this show, and we could quite frankly do this every single day pertaining to the NBA and certainly the NFL, talking about basketball without even necessarily talking about X's and O's and its legacies and its suspensions. And I want to incorporate hockey on this level. A lot of the knock, and trust me, we know it's a great sport. We're not saying it's not. But the knock that hockey gets is doesn't transfer well onto TV. And it's not necessarily an American sport. Kids don't grow up playing. It's money. There are a few factors. I wonder if the NHL can somehow strike more like of a drama balance like the NBA has, if it might actually increase its popularity a little bit.
Well, I think if you've seen what NBC has done with it since 2006, virtually every year that they've had it, the ratings have grown exponentially, especially in the playoffs. High-definition television is the best friend to hockey broadcasting known to man. The other thing that was created by Sam Flood at NBC Sports was the inside-the-glass analyst. That's made a huge difference in terms of bringing the energy, the passion, and the pace of the game to the people at home. So there have been a lot of subtle things that have been done to help the NHL, especially the NHL on NBC. And the other thing is we have so many stars in our league. You guys won't know this name, but Austin Matthews is going to be the number one pick in this summer's NHL draft, which takes place in Buffalo in about 10 days. He's from Scottsdale, Arizona.
Wow. That's amazing. I mean, I didn't know he was from there. So that just speaks to the growth of the sport. All these years ago when they planted the Coyotes in the desert, we're like, boy, it doesn't make any sense. Well, I guess it's coming to, paying dividends now.
One of the best things that I think Commissioner Bettman has done is expansion into non-traditional hockey markets. Texas is producing a ton of players. Florida is producing a ton of players. Southern California is producing massive amounts of players. Now we're getting Arizona. We're getting Carolina. Tennessee. Tennessee's already had a player play in the NHL, Blake Jeffrey. So you can go down the line. Non-traditional hockey market growth has been outstanding. And a big reason why is, and Tiki, you know this better than anybody, you retire from a team, you usually want to stay in the same marketplace because that's where you're going to have your best potential for professional growth. A lot of these players are retiring in these communities. They're staying there. They're getting involved at the grassroots level, and it's paying major dividends.
No, that makes a ton of sense. I think you're right. You see it definitely in football where guys become high school coaches, where they grew up or where they played at, and it passes it down the line. Pierre, let's move to the Stanley Cup and the Penguins. We know what happened midseason. They fire Mike Johnson. They hire Mike Sullivan. What changed with the new coach?
You'll love this being a former running back. They went to tempo, they went to pace, and they went to skill. So it wasn't about smash mouth. It was about skill. It was having the subtle surgical skills of a major trauma surgeon. They went fast. They went smaller. They went quicker. And they went up tempo. And, man, did it work. They brought up 3 young players from the American Hockey League, Tommy Kuhnackel, Connor Sheary, and Brian Rust. They traded for Trevor Daley from Chicago, who added huge pace to their back end. They traded for Kyle Hagelin from Anaheim, a former New York Ranger, who added tremendous pace. And in the summer, they added Phil Kessel from Toronto. So you put it all together, they went serious up-tempo, and those players had a ton of fun because it created, more than anything else, Brandon and Tiki, an organizational identity, and they thrived in it.
Talking to Pierre McGuire, well said. And, of course, Pierre, NHL NBC reporter with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio.
Pierre, how important was this for Sidney?
Gigantic, because it cements his legacy. I had Jeremy Roenick. I heard his intro for you guys. I had Jeremy Roenick when he was in high school as a hockey camper at our camp in Boston that I used to run. And Jeremy, you knew right away was going to be a great player and a potential Hall of Famer. It just was going to be, how was his pro career going to be? And he was a tremendous NHL player. Sidney's never had that question. He was always considered the next one. You had Gretzky, you had Lemieux, and then you had Crosby. He was going to be the cover boy for the league. And for a good reason, he was for a good portion of time. And then because of injury, he kind of lost his way and the team floundered and it didn't work. But now he's got 2 cups. He's got 2 Olympic gold medals. He's got a World Junior gold medal, a World Championship gold medal, 2 Hart trophies, 2 Conn Smythes, which was the MVP of the playoffs. He's now cemented his legacy as a great NHLer and a guaranteed Hall of Famer.
I mean, Sid, can you accomplish something, dude? I mean, can you do something to put on the resume? I mean, something, just a little something?
Yeah.
Pierre, I wanted to ask you this, because I lived in Northern California, not long, but long enough to know, because when I was there, things were starting to really erode with the San Jose Sharks. And
Right.
I remember being at the Blues game, the opener, they lost in 5 games I think that was the quarterfinals back in 2011. The next year they got dumped pretty quick, and 2 years ago they didn't even make the playoffs, whatever. I mean, do you think that for a team that was knocking on the door for so long, and that building rocks, as you know, do you think that the fans are fully satisfied because they took such a quantum leap, but obviously didn't win the championship? How do they view this season in totality?
You know, Brandon, I think in a real good way. I'll tell you why. I was so impressed with how they acted. I was there to do their St. Louis series, some of it. I did their entire Stanley Cup final. I go to the same place in San Jose to eat all the time, Original Joe's, just off Santa Clara Boulevard. And I love going there, and I hang out with all the locals. And you know what? Those people are really impressed with what's gone on with their team. I think they're energized by the style of play. I think they're energized by going to the Shark Tank and seeing what the experience, in-game experience is all about. They have superstar players. They've got a bunch more coming. I think San Jose's done a great job with the group, and I think their future is extremely bright.
Pierre McGuire, NHL on NBC reporter. Tiki and Tierney here, CBS Sports Radio.
Hey, Pierre, how sustainable is this for the Penguins?
Very much, Tiki. The biggest question they're going to have is dealing with a salary cap. They've got 3 players at the forward position that eat up almost $26 million of almost a $72 million cap. So that's pretty large for 3 players to eat up that much. It's going to be really interesting to see how they manufacture and maneuver through it all, Tiki. The one thing I would say is this. They've got a hard decision they have to make in goal. Are they going to keep Marc-Andre Fleury or trade him because he's obviously a huge cap hit? What are they going to do with Evgeny Malkin? Are they going to keep him or move him? So those are 2 major questions. But I think going forward, because of the growth of some of their young players, and they've got a tremendous young player coming up through the American Hockey League in Jake Gunsel. Remember that name. They're in a pretty good spot because Sidney told me the other night he's never felt this good. He's 100%. Their young players are starting to go. They got the best third line in hockey. They're in a real good spot, so I think it's very sustainable.
Pierre, you know what I wanted to ask you? Take it back to something you said before about how the NHL, Bettman, everybody's done a nice job of putting hockey in non-traditional locations. It's really helped fortify the sport, laid a real foundation, and obviously it's flourishing. It's come to fruition now based on who's going to be drafted first overall in 10 days, as you told us. But one thing they've got to be very worried about here is the future of hockey in Brooklyn. I mean, the Islanders have a team because Tavares is phenomenal, as we know. We know the Isles' history with Potvin and Bossy and Clark Gillies and Al Arbor, the 4 cups in a row. I mean, that is a legacy franchise, but it just seemed like Brooklyn, it just didn't pop. And if it doesn't pop right away, it's only going to get worse, don't you think?
I think it's a fair point. I was there to do their playoff series with the Florida Panthers, a series that they won. I did part of their series with Tampa, one that they lost. The fans were still invigorated during the playoffs. I can't say they were during the regular season unless they were playing against the Rangers, which was great.
Yeah.
I was there to do some of those games. But you know what? I think it's a fair point. The one thing I would say is they took a huge step forward by signing Casey Cizikas to a long-term deal. He's a very important part of that team. He's not a big-name player, but he's very popular with most of the players in the team. They have to deal with Matt Martin going forward, who's another popular player in that team. And they obviously have one of the premier players in the league in Tavares. But I would agree, they have to establish themselves, I think, very quickly in order to really solidify that base in Brooklyn. I think it's a great point.
All right, so you've been hustling for a while. I mean, do you just decompress, go to an island, go play golf? What is Pierre McGuire doing for the next month or so to hang out?
Well, believe it or not, I'm leaving Friday to go to an island with my 13-year-old son who's going to be going away to play hockey up in Boston next year. So we're going to have some father-son bonding time and then fishing and golfing down on an island. And then I've got to get ready for the Rio Olympics. I've got the draft to be ready for, and July 1st is free agency day. So I've got 2 big dates, the NHL draft, free agency day, and then about 20 days before I have to go to Rio. So it's not a lot of decompression this summer.
Those 3 weeks with your boys sound tremendous, though. Congrats. I didn't know he was that good of a player. Good stuff, Pierre.
Thanks a lot, Brandon. I appreciate it. Really nice visiting with you and Tiki. Thanks for having me on.
Likewise. Be good, Pierre.
Always welcome. There he is, Pierre McGuire.